Should a church be a 501c3? Could it be a 508 church instead? Now, most people have no idea what either one of those questions mean, and most people wouldn't think that this would be a controversial issue. But boy, would they be wrong. Well, today we're going to stir up the pot a little bit and really unpack this question about churches and the IRS. Stick around. This is going to be good. Hi, this is Greg McRae, founder and CEO of Foundation Group, and welcome back to our 501c3 University channel, where we strive to make nonprofit compliance understandable. And apparently it's also where we get people a little bit agitated. Back in early 2022, we posted a video about churches and 501c3. Now, we covered a lot of ground in that video, including the question about so-called 508 free churches. We'll link that video below. You may want to fast forward to about the 6-minute and 50-second mark to get straight to that part. Like I said, that segment of the video really stirred up a lot of people, which we kind of expected. But before I talk about the pushback, let me first outline the idea of a 508 free church. Search the web on this free church idea, and it won't take you long to uncover some pretty interesting websites. YouTube's got plenty of videos on this stuff too. Now, the idea is simple enough. Churches exist in a different category than other nonprofits, and even though churches can be a 501c3, they don't have to be. Now, that's somewhat true so far, but they go further. They will tell you that for a church to accept 501c3 status, well, it's akin to making the church subservient to the government. Now, the real zealots will insist that it's antithetical to being a true Christian church. So instead, you need to form a 508 free church, a common law status guaranteeing tax exemption without being a 501c3. In other words, you can have your cake and eat it too. It's their own preferred version of separation of church and state. Now, some of the comments we got when we attempted to debunk some of this in the last video, one person asked, what about 508s instead of a 501? Well, we had to remind them to watch the video. Another person said the true church is tax immune. That's the common law basis of the First Amendment. Once your organization accepts the privilege granted by the state, you cease to be the real thing. Then they accused us of being a grifting operation. Another comment said, you clearly have a financial motive to ignore the risk of doing business with the IRS. Last time I checked, every American has to do business with the IRS. Kind of hard to avoid it. Here's another one. If the Lord wanted us to collude with the government, he would have said so. Okay, colluding implies a conspiracy to do something together, and I don't think obeying tax law equates with colluding. I also recall something Jesus said about rendering unto Caesar. My absolute favorite one is this. Beware of this channel. Ask this guy what his real job is. Something smells rotten here, friends. Well, you know you're doing something right when you start getting comments like that. For what it's worth, he took that comment down later, but I screenshot it for posterity. Look, I'm not trying to push people's buttons. We do these videos to help nonprofits understand and comply with the law. That's a good thing, even if you don't particularly like the law. On top of that, I'm personally a Christian, and I understand the wariness people have about the IRS. I get it. No one wants to feel like they're subjugating the gospel to a restrictive set of rules established by the government. But all that aside, neither wariness nor paranoia justify lying to people. I'm just going to lay it out there and probably enrage a few people in the process. There is no such thing as a 508 free church. So where does this idea come from? Well, ironically, the idea of a tax-exempt church that's free from IRS or governmental regulation comes from the tax code itself, Section 508. Now, the con men who push this stuff are referring specifically to 508c1a of the tax code, where it talks about churches being automatically tax exempt. Now, some will try to say it's a later section of the tax code that supersedes Section 501c3. Well, 508 follows 501, so it must be something added later, right? Wrong. All right, let's start killing some sacred cows. First of all, Section 508 wasn't added later. Section 508A was written along with 501c, the purpose of which was to explain how to obtain 501c status. And specifically, 508c1a, the part these guys are hanging their argument on, is the section of the tax code that explains how churches are automatically tax exempt without applying for 501c3 status. They get that part right. Where they get it horribly wrong is that the status they automatically get is 501c3 status. Hear me when I say this. There is no separate status under 508A. Tax-exempt organizations are exclusively described in Section 501c. 508A just tells you how to get 501c3 status, either by application or in the case of a church, it's automatic. So the real question is, should a church be a 501c3? Now that's a legitimate question to ask, and there's no one right answer. Churches have to decide that for themselves. If they wish to be tax exempt, they will either operate under the automatic 501c3 status or apply for IRS recognition, which is what we typically recommend. But here's the important part, and please rewind this 20 times if need be. Your church cannot be tax exempt unless it is tax exempt under Section 501c. Your church cannot be tax exempt unless it is tax exempt under Section 501c. There is no 508 church. There is no free church that's somehow magically untouchable by the government under common law, whatever that's supposed to mean. I talked about this in the last video on this subject, and that's the alternative, and I'll go over it again here. Your church doesn't have to be a 501c3. If you prefer not to be a 501c3, that's a doable thing, but there's only one way to accomplish that. Don't be tax exempt and instead pay taxes like a business. That's it. It's that simple. Organize as an LLC or a corporation. That's important so you can avoid personal liability being on the members, and then report your income and expenses on a business tax return. If you brought in more money than you spent, pay taxes on the profit. I'm going to say this plainly because I respect your intelligence enough to shoot with you straight. If someone tells you that your church can be tax exempt but have no accountability to the IRS, they are lying to you. Don't believe me? Go read Section 508A of the Internal Revenue Code. You'll see for yourself that these guys are confused at best, but most likely lying to you on purpose. Why? For some, I think it's willful ignorance. For others, they have an anti-government agenda, or worse, they're trying to sell you something. Our team at Foundation Group takes our job seriously. We've helped tens of thousands of nonprofits navigate tax law and requirements for over 25 years. We love what we do, and we don't shrink back from telling you like it is. I know we'll likely stir up a hornet's nest with all of this again, but you got a comment, leave it below. We'll try to respond best we can. Should be interesting. Thanks for watching. Now go serve your community. Hey, do me a favor and don't navigate away just yet. We would really appreciate it if you would click the like button, as it really helps get our content recommended to more people. Subscribe if you haven't already, as we have great content coming your way on a regular basis. Finally, you can click the little bell icon to be notified of new content when we post it. To learn more about Foundation Group, you can always visit us on the web at www.501c3.org. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.